He has an extensive career in information and communication technology and in public service. A lawyer and IT expert, he led the digitalization shift at the Supreme Court. Now, his mandate is to carry out the government's digital transformation plans for the Philippines. Please welcome DICT Secretary Ivan John Enrile Uy. Good to see you again, Sec Ivan. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here, Kathy.
And it's budget season. We're in the middle of budget season for all the government agencies.
That's
and
true.
So far, the DICT, just among several of those who have seen an approval at the House Appropriations Committee just last September 21st for your budget. How is that battle for a higher budget coming along?
Well, it's a perennial battle for a higher budget for all agencies and government. So at least what we're able to do is we're able to explain to Congress, who holds the purse, how important our projects are and the directives of the President and how we intend to implement it given the resources that are allocated to us. And of course, with the wish that if more resources are given, then we can actually do more.
Yeah, there's always that wish, but it becomes an easier conversation if they really knew what you did. Because
Yes.
it's oftentimes it's the other agencies who get the credit for what you do, bringing inclusive and affordable connectivity to the whole country.
Yeah, and it's not just connectivity; it's also public service. Access to government service. And as uh, been explaining to a lot of people, the ICT is like a cook or a chef in a restaurant, where we actually do things in the background, but we produce the food, and the people who are in front are the waiters. They're the ones who serve. They're the ones that the people see and talk to. So, and they actually get the tips, not the chefs or the cooks. So that's how the ICT is. We're not that visible, unlike the frontline agencies like the social welfare, public works, transportation, tourism, where a lot of those agencies are where the public can actually see, feel, and engage with. We develop the systems, we develop the applications that enable these agencies, these frontline agencies, to get to be more efficient in the way they do their mandate and to deliver the public services that the people deserve in a easier, seamless way. So so that's where we are. We aggregate and we consolidate and we process all these complex information and data across all the different government agencies.
If you were to describe what DICT does in so many ways, what would you say to that person?
Well, yeah, especially a flight attendant, when they ask me, what is the ICT? So I just tell them, well, do you use e-travel? And they that immediately, you can see the eyes glow in recognition that, oh yes, because they use e-travel every day in their work. Said, well, that's the ICT. That's where we are. We developed the e-travel to link immigration, quarantine, customs, tourism, transportation, all together in one app. So we're the consolidator. We're the ones who bring all these agencies together. They can work together and simplify the life of the common citizen.
And that actually happened in reality. You were
Yes.
just mentioning earlier in one of your trips
Right.
that had been a question. It was also how I came to know about the app because I do travel a lot as well, and I do have the e-travel form that I have to fill online. But there is also the digital national ID,
Yes.
which I had discussed in great detail with USEC Dave Almirol when he was here just about a couple of weeks ago. What does that do, though, for say, national security or maybe even national development? Could you connect the dots for us on the importance of having something that's digitally provided and which gives every citizen the power each of us needs for identification or maybe even access to services?
Well, as you have seen, especially in a lot of the Senate and House hearings today, verification of a person's identity can be quite challenging. And being unable to do so clearly would allow people to game the system, assume somebody else's identity, or create a different, completely different persona. Uh, some are not even Filipinos, but they are able to assume Philippine citizenship and present themselves as Filipinos. So it's very very important that the ability to clearly verify a person as to who that person is critical for national security. And it's a great enabling tool in order to remove fraud or opportunities for deception. Whether you're talking about elections, where the identity of the person voting, you're ensured that that person is really the one who's voting, or even a person who is accessing social services. Because without a clear way of verifying a person's identity, a person can claim two, three times using different identity documents, but exactly the same person. And so that's where the critical functionality of identity verification comes in, and that's where we are strengthening it through the digital platforms.
There is no doubt there's the concept of national security, the national importance of really having access and affordable internet for all, but it is an uphill battle when we go back to the budget.
Yes.
There is the problem of low utilization rate. That's become the biggest deterrent for the DICT because records would show, and these records were provided by the Congressional Policy and Research Office, they do point to historically low utilization rates
True.
at DICT.
True.
What have you done in the 2 years that you've been in office to address the issue and convince those lawmakers, you got to give me a bigger budget?
Well, we have to show it by performance, and that's what we've done. And we've shown that we have increased the utilization rate tremendously from very low figures. I think in the past they were like in the 30%, 30-40% figure. This year we are on the road to getting about the 90% BOR by the end of the year.
How did you do that?
Well, we just have to crack the whip and actually improve many of the internal processes within the department. You see, the challenge in the past was that DICT, DICT is just a 7-year-old department.
It was created in 2016.
Yes. And during the previous administration, from 2016 to 2022, in the period of 6 years, there were 4 secretaries. So, can you imagine a new secretary being appointed, maybe a 6-month learning curve, then getting all his undersecretaries appointed? You've already lost about a year. Getting all the organization, getting all the planning, preparing for the budget, and then you sit for 6 months, a year and a half, then you get replaced by another secretary. And that went on 4 times during the previous administration. So how do you get things done with that continuing restarting from square one? So I can empathize with the previous secretaries, and it must have been very frustrating for them that they have to reorganize, do it from scratch, and then it created a lot of problems because certain contracts that were awarded, then when they were replaced by another secretary, some of those contracts were not endorsed or the documents were not endorsed to the next secretary. And so they don't get paid. And then they try to process it, and then they get replaced again. The whole team gets replaced again, then another one. So by the time we get in, we discovered that there were a lot of agreements, a lot of projects that were half done and half paid. And so they all come to us asking us, you better pay up all these things that you owe. And then we ask them, okay, so, but we don't have any records that you were awarded these contracts. Can you show us the contracts? And they couldn't produce any contract. And we don't have records of the contracts. And all the people, the series of hands that it has been passed through have all resigned. They're all in different places, and no accountability, nothing. So
how did you start over then? I mean, how did you ensure that there was going to be accountability from day one?
So we have to start from our day one and forward. So with all of those,
from year two.
Yes, year after 1 year. So we had a difficult time during the first year, because during the first year, that's where we uncovered so much organizational gaps and operational inefficiencies in the organization, and we need to get all of those fixed during the first year. Otherwise, we'll have problems in the second year.
So you can confidently say now that you've sorted out those issues, and that you're pretty much set on the second and third and fourth and so many years.
Majority of the issues.
Majority of
Yes,
the issues
but
that can improve perhaps your absorptive capacity, because that is also an issue that was brought up.
Yeah, that's the same thing. The absorptive capacity and the low utilization.
Yes.
And I'm quite confident we were able to resolve that already. But then there are still a lot of legacy issues that probably may not have any solution at all. And that's where I think some of the bigger challenges are.
Such as?
Well, such as how do you pay contractors that could not produce any contract? So perennially, they would send us bills. Pay this amount, you owe us, and then we go back and ask them, where's the contract? There's no contract, but still the bill still keeps on coming out. And then it ends up during a budget hearing, somebody will ask, why haven't you paid these contractors what you owe them? And and many of these contracts were done in the previous years, not during our administration. And there's no way for us to find those documents. I mean, at the very least, the contractor should have a copy of the contract. And they would admit secretly they don't, because it was an accommodation or whatever. So they don't. So how do we pay? We'll go to jail if we pay something that's not fully documented. So it's the devil between the devil and the deep blue sea situation.
But you do have the budget, and that you said you could be happier with a bigger one. They did give you a bigger one,
Yes.
relatively, maybe not at the level which you have preferred, 37% of a bump, but you were given a little less. You still have the Senate to fight for that gap that you're looking for. What are the chances, given the constraints?
In fact, in many of the issues on low utilization, we can actually show proof that we're even more advanced. So for instance, in the free Wi-Fi program, which in the past had very low utilization, we practically consumed our entire budget for free Wi-Fi as of June. So we actually didn't have any funds anymore available in July.
It's a good problem.
Yes. Yes, it's
to have, but not so when you look at it from a sustaining point of view,
yes.
because President Marcos had actually asked the DICT to focus on that,
Right.
to provide that connectivity program in areas where the government can deliver free Wi-Fi.
Right. And that's what we're working out now with DBM, with Congress, is how do we now uh, fix the whole budgeting process so that we don't encounter repeatedly, those same legacy problems that plague the free Wi-Fi program in the past. Actually, from the National Expenditure Program, we got more than 20% increase.
Okay,
in
so
our
you're
budget.
looking for a 17% bump from the 20% increase to get 37%. What are the chances, though, at the Senate?
We have to present our case before the senators.
But you just
and
did. You presented the case in the free public internet access program, which
to
now
the House.
To the House,
Right.
And you did make a mention of the sources of funds to sustain that project.
Mhm.
There is a Department of Budget and Management, and there is also the so-called spectrum user fees.
Mhm.
Where are we in those discussions, and where might the new revenue sources come from if we consider the House bill that's come out on third and final reading, House Bill 10699, removing those spectrum fees from public communications entities, which eventually means the ICT can no longer charge a levy to the PCEs or PTEs.
Yes. Well, we'll see how that comes into fruition. Uh, if there are no spectrum users fees, government will have to find other sources for that. Uh, in other countries where spectrum users fees are not imposed, government actually does a spectrum auction where the telcos will have to bid to buy the frequencies. So instead of being allocated and paying an amount regularly, they have to participate in an actual auction. And in other countries, the auctions are sold for billions of dollars. So, but then you just move from a fee that is collected annually to a lump sum that is collected upfront in that auction. So we'll see. I mean, Congress is still deliberating on that. So otherwise, government may have to be more creative in finding other sources of funding.
If you can get it from the Senate, that bump up of a 17% of an increase in the budget, would you be able to draw funds from that to fund the free internet program?
For the year. But
For
how do you
2025?
Yeah, but how do you sustain it now for 26, 27, 28 if there are no fees that are collected that can fund to ensure the continuity of the project?
Are there conversations now in Congress leading towards a spectrum auction?
I have no idea. I don't know yet.
But as far as DBM is concerned, are they still willing to fund a portion of that program, given its priority?
Well, considering that it's still a bill, so the spectrum users fees are still collected regularly. So DBM is acting under that guidance of utilizing those fees. So, but I'm sure that once Congress decides one way or the other, DBM will have to adjust to how the law comes out. Because remember, the utilization of the spectrum users fees for the free Wi-Fi is also because of a law, the Free Public Internet Access Law, that mandates that the free Wi-Fi program should be funded from the spectrum users fee. So we're just following the Congress in that law, implementing it. So if Congress decides to remove that source, they basically either will have to repeal the free Wi-Fi law or make other ways of funding it.
On the connectivity program, the call to action from President Marcos is that we provide connectivity to the remote and isolated areas. These are the GIDA, geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. How far have you come into that program where you do provide that kind of connectivity to the far-flung areas? And what kind of benefits have we seen so far in the program itself?
Well, it's a game changer, especially for the remote areas. Many of those areas have never had any communication facility, whether wireless, mobile, or fixed lines. So by providing at least internet access to them via satellite or via wireless devices, uh, they suddenly create economic activity in those areas. And we're not just saying providing the connectivity for schools, for telemedicine, but it generates e-commerce transactions, and the community there, most of them are unbanked, suddenly are able to open e-wallets and online bank accounts. So these people who used to travel several hours or several days by boat or crossing mountains and rivers in order to get to the nearest municipality that there's a rural bank so that they can deposit money or withdraw money, now do not have to do so, because from there, wherever they are, from those remote barangays, they have the capability now of doing transactions, financial transactions, through their devices. They can get remittances directly from their relatives abroad. They can purchase goods and things online through those connectivity. And in fact, some of those remote areas where they actually produce very beautiful um, hand, handicrafts. In the past, their only access is bringing them, loading them on a banca or loading them on a horse, and bringing it to the municipality where a trader will buy it cheap in exchange for a sack of rice or in exchange for a few canned goods. Then those traders now sell it at a very high price in the department stores. Today, with those connectivity, these people can now directly sell their goods abroad, uh, because they can show to the world that these things are handmade, and the people, buyers, can actually see them being done live online and make their orders directly. So can you imagine the financial empowerment of these communities, the amount of revenue that they're able to generate, the economic liberalization of those communities by being able to now price their goods at a fair value that is paid in foreign currency, actually, and it goes directly to their e-wallets.
You've been to these communities. I understand you do the footwork in some of
Yes,
these
yes.
remote and isolated communities.
We've climbed mountains, crossed rivers, and
Rode the banca. Which one stands out amongst all the visits and that turnaround that you just said? That
well, this one was
transformation?
in Sakol Island, which is in the southern part of Zamboanga Peninsula. It's a very remote. It's a remote island down south, uh, near Holo, and this island used to be the hideout for the Abu Sayyaf. So now you can see that with this kind of connectivity, which we just provided in the last 2 years, uh, it's really transformative. And so the island now is being recognized by the International Telecommunications Union as a smart island. And we're still pouring more resources there, training the people on digital entrepreneurship, on content creation, and on many other technology learnings, so that they can be more empowered. We teach them also how to, financial literacy, how to manage their accounts and all those. And very important, teach them cyber hygiene, how not to be scammed by scammers who can be very convincing. Lately, we've seen the scale and the sophistication of the scammers and the cyber criminals in this area.
And also cyber literacy that takes us to the elementary schools and really educating the young on how to protect themselves.
Yes.
Going back to those smart cities, very interesting, as the priority really is to roll out in these GIDA areas. Which ones can we identify from the DICT's perspective as potential smart islands?
So Sakol is one of those that have been identified by the ITU, and we're doing several of those all over the country, mostly in the Visayas and Mindanao regions. So, and the goal really is looking at communities that have attained a certain level of population that can maximize the benefit of technology, because not all communities are mature enough, at that level. That so because of the very limited resources that we have, we really have to be quite picky. We don't want to waste resources in areas where it will not make an impact in the community.
So we're talking access points, unique users,
Right.
how many,
The population,
the population itself.
and how many types of use cases. So there should be a school, a barangay center, community center, a health center, then that will provide a variety of utilization of the digital transport that we're giving. Because if that digital transport is going to go there, it's just going to have one use, then it doesn't make that much sense. This will again require funding to be able to deploy those things. We're looking at many different models on that, not necessarily relying purely on the spectrum users' fees. We could explore PPPs, public-private partnerships. We are working, let's say, in some instances, we're working with the local government units. So some of the local governments, they have their own funding. So they will tell us, they will set up the access points. We provide the bandwidth. So we pay only for the bandwidth. We don't have to pay for the gensets, for the solar panels, for the routers and all those. They'll take care of that. Then that way, we can save more money because the local government is partnering with us in being able to deploy them. So this kind of partnership, this kind of collaboration are some of the strategies that we're adopting in order to ensure continuity with this free Wi-Fi program.
But you gotta make faster move on that, because the last time I checked, that funding is going to end by the second month of next year, 2025.
Oh, the funding that was given to us for renewal, but then that's the funding that was released recently by DBM last July. We've already incorporated that need for funding on the 2025 budget. So our aim is when that funding expires in February, we already have the 2025 budget to cover for to continue the February when it expires in February.
Great. So we can rest easy now. Hindi tayo mapuputulan.
Yes.
In other words.
Right.
I was looking at the 2024 edition of the UN's ICT Development Index, and the Philippines scored 74.4
Yes.
out of 100 nations. So that's a jump of 14%
Right.
from year on year. But that still remained below the world average of what is 74.8. So this study says we landed 5th lowest in the East and Southeast Asian region. Looks like we still have a lot of catching up to do.
Yes, I mean, if you're starting from the bottom rung, it takes quite a while to get up there. But these kind of jumps, I would like to probably assure you that expect more of these jumps in the remaining years that we are there.
What do you think is going to power that next jump? I mean, yes, it's a jump of 14%, maybe another double-digit jump. What's going to cause that?
Well, first is that we're becoming more adept at, at strategizing on how to to deploy digitalization. Uh, we have liberalized our investment laws, our Public Service Act that allows for more uh, incentives, 100% foreign ownership in some areas. So those kinds of liberalization will definitely bring in the investments necessary for us to quickly scale up the deficiencies that we've accumulated over the decades of lack of probably investments in this sector.
Which leads us to the hard infrastructure when you talk about the tower, the cell sites, the data centers. Where are we in the data center infrastructure? Very critical
Yes.
to the whole digital transformation program.
Indeed. And the biggest factor actually that is affecting our data center deployment is the cost of power, cost of energy. We have one of the highest costs in the world. And so that's a big disincentive because any data center, whether you're talking for hyperscalers or for AI data centers, are power hungry and they require huge amounts of power. And if we don't have the capacity to provide them with that power or with power that is competitive with the rest of the world, then it is an uphill climb to get them in. So I think our Department of Energy is coming up with also intensive scaling up of power generation, power distribution, and transmission capacity all across the country. So we are working together in order to find ways to synergize this challenge.
So what sort of timeline are we looking at in completing a single data center from the government's view?
We're looking at maybe in the next couple of years, we should be able to come up with at least one or two data centers exclusively for government, especially to host our sovereign data, because that's very critical to any country. That sovereign data should remain, within our country.
So in the next couple of years, our sovereign data are co-located. This is the current strategy of the DICT, to co-locate in data centers possibly run by foreign sources. Is that correct?
We will have to do a lot of combination. So, although most of the um, hyperscalers, when they do it in the past, the concept was the data centers are located abroad, but they've all shifted already, and many of them create what you call local zones, where they avail of local data centers and create these local zones where their cloud infrastructure can have shorter timelines in terms of deployment, or what we call latency. So being in a local zone. So those are the new approaches today in terms of hosting of data, and we are working. In the next few years, we will be seeing huge amounts of data centers that are coming up. Mostly actually run by the telcos. Um, the major telcos, PLDT, Globe, they're all investing in a lot of data centers, and these data centers, many of them are coming online end of the year or by 2025, they gradually will come online. And I think it will more than double or triple our current data center capacity.
So can you assure the safety of our sovereign data? The
Well,
data that really needs to stay within Philippine shores
well,
because of its sensitivity.
that will depend on the data center providers like PLDT or Globe, where we will be co-locating or hosting, who will be hosting our data there. So, of course, we will implement certain data security standards, but I'm sure the data center providers will also have to set up their data center. There are international standards that are out there that have to be complied with in order to ensure their certification. So these will have to be certified data centers that comply with those international standards.
Part of the National Expenditure Program is the e-governance program, where the e-app, the e-government app
Yes.
sits in. Are you happy with the way that's being rolled out, at the constraints that we're seeing, the capacity constraints that we're seeing because of the lack of connectivity in the remote and isolated areas?
Well, we cannot wait for everything to be in place before we do the project. So it all goes in parallel. So as we develop and design more eGov systems and eGov solutions, then we tackle each problem as they come up. For now, we are identifying what we call the low-hanging fruits. Which government agencies are mature enough in their digital status that can quickly be incorporated in the eGov app. So those are the government agencies that we target first, so that the public can immediately feel that things are moving. Then agencies that are lacking in terms of digital maturity will have to be placed on a second or third or fourth phase of the implementation. And the lack of digital connectivity in many of the remote areas should not be a showstopper for us, to prevent us from developing many of these, because we are servicing not just them. We're servicing the urban communities. We're servicing many of the centers of business, of industry, that will also need these services. So it should not be a hindrance to us in developing more apps and in improving access to public service.
And as those public services come through because of connectivity, in come the bad actors. Again, the cybersecurity issue that you
Yes.
mentioned earlier.
Right.
You've mentioned the need for a single comprehensive law to prevent all the cybersecurity crimes happening.
Well,
we do have multiple laws, but aren't
yes,
those
They're-
enough? I mean,
they-
we have so many. We have the anti-scam law, anti-misinformation law, anti-deepfake law.
Yes, and we have the cybercrime law too, so and then we have the SIM card registration. So, you know, our legislature comes up with all these laws as the threats evolve. So each time new problems come up, then legislation comes up. So, but over the years, these legislations start piling one on top of each other. And now we start seeing that some of those laws become disconnected or segmented. And we're addressing, we're micromanaging, so to speak, because this is the technique that they're using. We come up with a law addressing the technique. When they move to another one, then we make another law. So I think we need to look at a more comprehensive approach, where we look at it from the big picture and what are we addressing. Other countries have consolidated into one. Let's say in Singapore, they call it the online harm law. So anything that you do that will cause harm online is covered by that law. So whether you're a scammer, you're phishing, you're hacker, you're a deepfake misinformation, you know, so long as it harms people online, then it's covered with law. So maybe that might be a good model where we can start looking at addressing it more on a comprehensive scale or manner.
Now that you mentioned deepfake, that kind of technology is already proliferating in the elections that have happened. For instance, in Taiwan,
Yes.
they've
And
reported,
even now in the United States.
and even in the U.S. as the elections approach in November.
Yes.
What can we learn from what you're seeing from your point of view on the deepfake technology out there, the use of photos and videos that misrepresent the true nature
Well,
of the message?
we are learning a lot from it. And in fact, we're seeing many of it also already sprouting even here in the Philippines.
And what are you doing about it?
So we are working. You know, many of these deep fakes and misinformation, there's only one major avenue where it proliferates, and it's in the social media platforms. It cannot proliferate much through email or through text. It's really the social media platforms that gives it the platform for it to generate the viewership, to generate the impact that these malefactors are intending it to have, that impact. So the only way to do so is to work with the social media platform providers, because they do have control of what goes out and what doesn't go out. They design the algorithms, they design the rules, they have content managers that supposedly ensures responsible use of their platforms. So we need to call them out quite often and mention to them the irresponsible use of their platforms in some of these. And so instead
Do
of
you recommend that they be penalized, like the banks? The Anti-Money Laundering
yes,
Council does penalize banks for being a platform
right,
for where the cybercrime happens.
right.
Should
And
social media
and
platforms
there's the
also be
anti-financial fraud
penalized?
law that just was just signed by the president.
Right.
So it actually penalizes banks if they do not do enough due diligence in ascertaining that a person is using fake identification in order to open a mule account, a money mule account. So I think the social media platforms should start assuming a certain level of responsibility, because they become enablers. They are enablers for good, but their platforms become also enablers for evil.
So they should be fined.
There should be a way of making them accountable. The challenge is many of these social media platforms are not located in country, so they're international. They're based somewhere else in another country, and then they provide those services um, to your country.
So I guess it's on us then, as the voting public, on how we protect ourselves from such deepfake technology. What advice can we give to
Well,
the voters?
It's
to
very
us?
difficult to protect because we don't have control of the platform. So the platform is fed to us, and it's literally shoved into our face whenever we look at our phones or our mobile or all our devices. So really, I believe that the solution really is the platform providers have to become good citizens, good digital citizens, and be more accountable and more responsible. That being an enabler should be for the common good, and it's not just all for profit. And I think that's an agreement that I find consensus among the different countries. And I believe that if the platform providers do not do something about this positively, there will be repercussions because governments worldwide will act together. And that may have a very negative consequence to these platform providers. So I think
Perhaps a ban then. We're thinking about a blanket ban.
possibly, or cross-border penalties that will be recognized by the host countries, or something to that effect. So So that will definitely have a very negative impact on the business case for these platform providers. So I think that will be a very sound incentive for them to start becoming more responsible with the platforms that they provide.
I guess also as an incentive for those, the young who are watching and listening to us right now, is to consider maybe if they're in IT, to offer their services to governments.
Yes.
But you got to give them an incentive to do so,
Right.
because I hear that it doesn't pay very well.
Government doesn't pay very well. So
But the need is so high,
Very,
for,
very high.
for IT experts
Right.
to be in government.
Right, and that's what we've been also struggling with, is to get the right talents to work for government. So first approach is tap on their nationalism. Uh, while they're young, perhaps they would like to, you know, we should stop complaining about government, about the inefficiencies of government, about the bureaucracy, about the red tape. If we are not willing to put our effort in improving government, and this is their opportunity. You complain, so why don't you join and help us improve? Help us make government more responsive to the needs of the people. Help us make government more efficient. Make government more transparent. Whatever your complaints, stop complaining. Let's do something about it. And one way of doing something about it is put your effort into it. The government needs your help. Come, help the government. And then somewhere along the way, you might find fulfillment. Maybe not monetarily, but maybe psychologically, emotionally. You feel that you were able to make a difference for the lives of our fellow Filipinos, for the lives of all future generations. And I think that kind of psychological, moral rewards um, is more long term than the temporary monetary rewards that is quite common in other jobs.
Is that the reason why you came back to government? You already spent some time in 2011.
Yes.
So it's a return
Yes.
to the fold
Yes.
2 years ago.
And well, mainly because I feel that we can finally make a difference, and that this administration is serious on digitalization as one of the primary strategies in making our country more progressive and more competitive in the world stage. We miss out on this opportunity, we are going to be in deep trouble. And I think the Philippines cannot miss out on this opportunity. We have so much to offer to the world. We have so many talented people. We have so much resources. It is very unfair that we will be in the bottom rung of in the world stage. It's time for the Filipinos. It's time for the Philippines to make ourselves known and to shine on the world stage. And I think this is the right opportunity for that.
Second time's a charm, and I wish you all the best in making that difference. Thank you so much,
Thank
Sec
you.
Ivan.
Thank you,
Appreciate the
Cathy.
time. Catch us again next Thursday at 9 p.m. Philippine Standard Time on One News. You can also check out the long conversation on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And if you haven't done so, like or follow my social media pages. I'm Cathy Yang, and this is Thought Leaders.